Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Matchbook Champions League podcast. I'm Phil Kitromilides, joined as ever by Mark O'Hare and Ian Broadrick to look ahead to this week's games in Europe's Premier Club competition, the second legs of quarterfinals. Last week, we had, not a bad week. 2 winners from 4 tips. Hopefully we'll go a little bit better this week. We've got some interestingly poised ties as well. Going to kick off with Liverpool against Real Madrid. But before we do that, let me tell you about a special sign-up offer we have for new customers. If you are a new customer, you're not yet a Matchbook customer, please do the following. If you register and become a new customer, use the bonus code INSIGHTS. Why? Because you'll get 0% commission on all sports for 30 days from registration. Bonus code INSIGHTS, 0% commission on all sports for 30 days. Well worth doing. It's for new customers only. Obviously, you have to be over 18, and please, as always, very important, please gamble responsibly. So we are going to kick off with Liverpool against Real Madrid, a match which brought us a winner last week. Brothers really fancied the goals in this, and so proved the case as Real Madrid won by 3-1. You can get Liverpool to win at evens, Real Madrid to win at Anfield at 3.66, and the draw at 4.15. On the handicaps, Liverpool minus a goal head start 1.95, Real Madrid with a plus half a goal head start at 1.92. The goal line is 3, overs is at 2.04, unders is at 1.84. It was Brothers who nailed a winner in this game last week, but we're going to Mark first for this, and we feel like there might be more goals in this, Mark.
Yeah, I think so. I think the tie is set up that way. But yeah, I'm still kind of in shock how easy Real Madrid had it last weekend in that first half in particular against Liverpool. I think you have to praise Zinedine Zidane for that. He doesn't often get the praise he probably does deserve. And I think having Kroos and Modric in the deep playmaker roles, playing those pinpoint passes over the top of the press and out to the flanks in particular, worked really well. They clearly studied Liverpool's weaknesses and exposed them quite superbly, executed the game plan excellently. And Liverpool's high line didn't work very well, nor did the errors in the individual errors either. So, yeah, and I think out of possession, Real Madrid too sort of sat relatively deep, got men behind the ball, and they looked pretty impenetrable for most of the game. I thought the only time in which they looked a little bit uneasy and fragile was when the game did start to sort of descend into a bit of a basketball end-to-end kind of counter-attack match, which didn't really suit them. But as soon as the third goal went in, they just shut up shop and saw the game out. I thought it was a very professional performance. You called it absolutely spot on. In the big games, they tend to come to the party, and they did so again at the weekend in the Clasico as well. Another commanding performance too. So I don't think Liverpool are going to be anywhere near as bad as they were in that first leg at all. They do have the away goal, but they're still quite a big, obviously a big task for them to try and overturn things. They'll be confident, of course, the Anfield factor, but I don't think Real Madrid are going to be fearful at all after what they've achieved in the first leg, and particularly about fans at Anfield as well. So, I think from a Zidane's perspective, it should be a rinse and repeat. If he can get the same tune out of Vinicius down that left side, I think Real Madrid will be laughing, really. I fully expect them to score. And obviously, Liverpool are going to have to attack, and it depends when they're going to come out and attack. I expect it'll be from the very first minutes. They're going to try and up the pace, up the tempo of the game. But it's going to be very difficult for them to overturn things. So, yeah, I'm expecting something very similar to what we saw last weekend, actually. Madrid kind of happy to sort of sit and see, try and take the counter-attack approach, and then Liverpool to kind of come onto them. And, we're going to get... I'd be interested to see the team sheet. I expect Klopp might try and pigeonhole all 4 forwards into the team this time around. His team selection came in for criticism last week, and quite rightly so. Their midfield were completely overrun, and the decision to not choose Thiago from the start looked very peculiar indeed. But yeah, I guess, we talked about this game a week ago, but the way the tie is set up, where both teams' strengths are at right now, going forward, the defensive absentees, Real Madrid now without Lucas Vazquez as well, it looks like the perfect ingredients for a goal-based bet. So I'm not sure about Varane. It's presumed he is going to be out, but I've read this morning that there's a potential he might be involved because it's Wednesday. I expect Valverde and Kroos to be okay, despite knocks at the weekend as well. So I wouldn't really be keen on backing Real Madrid in any sort of market. They don't have to win this game, but goals certainly appeal to me at the prices. So for me, over 2 3/4 at just shy of 1.8.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be on goals in this one, particularly what we saw in the first leg. You mentioned Real Madrid always sort of coming to the party in the big matches. In matches this season, they've beaten Barcelona twice, Inter Milan twice, Atletico Madrid, Sevilla, and now Liverpool. They've lost to Levante, Cadiz, Alaves, Shakhtar Donetsk, and Alcoyano from the third tier of Spanish football. It's absolutely bizarre, but it does point to the fact that when teams open up against them and don't sit in a low block and defend, they are vulnerable to Real Madrid. What do we think is going to happen, brothers? Do you feel pretty confident of more goals in this one?
Yes, I mean, Mark's covered most of the points that I would make. I think the first game surprised me. I mean, obviously, you were very pro Real Madrid, and I think we were all shocked at how poor Liverpool were in that first half. I thought they were better in the second half. They applied themselves with more purpose, but Real Madrid were very comfortable. And I think it will be very interesting to see how this game pans out tactically, because we know Liverpool at Anfield will come out firing from the first second, and they're going to apply a huge amount of pressure on Real Madrid, and that's something that that's an area of the game which they are going to miss Ramos in. They're going to miss his organisation and his leadership at the back there. So I do agree with Mark. I think this game has all the hallmarks of a game that should have goals. I highlighted in last week about the defensive shortcomings of both sides. Real Madrid again didn't keep a clean sheet at the weekend against Barcelona, albeit in a winning game. So I think the easiest way to approach this is goals. I think I fully expect both teams to score, and I mean I would actually probably go over 3. Mark's more conservative than I am, but I think over 3 is perfectly fine as well in this. And I think it's a very straightforward game where Liverpool have to attack. Madrid have got the quality, and we've seen that they can, in Cruz, they've obviously got someone who can ping over those magnificent balls. Nat Phillips was shown to be the sort of very average defender that he was by the run that Vinicius made for the first goal last week. It was just a very straightforward, straight ball. And Vinicius running behind, obviously controlled it brilliantly, but and finished it extremely well. But if you can get opened up that easily by a single straight ball, then you're not going to be keeping many clean sheets at this level. So, I do expect Real Madrid to score. And I think Liverpool are just going to have to go for it. So, over 3, keep it simple. I don't hate backing Liverpool at even money in this as well. But I think, again, just purely because, even a 2-1 win, for example, for Liverpool sees Real Madrid go through. I don't think Madrid have to get something from this. But I think, looking at for the reasons that I quite liked Liverpool last week, I still quite like Liverpool this week. I think they can't be as bad as they were in that first half, and I think getting around even money on them isn't the worst bet. It's not a bet I'm going to have, I should stress, but I think it's I think if you look at the prices, then that's not too bad. But I think easiest way to play is goals.
Okay, if you're listening to us on the podcast, thank you. Keep listening. If you're watching us, we are live across Matchbook's social media channels, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Get involved. You can write us a comment and ask us a question, and we'd love to have you involved in the program. Gerard has very politely said, "Good morning, gentlemen." Good morning, Gerard. Thank you for joining us on the Matchbook Champions League podcast. So that's Liverpool, Real Madrid, and we are going with the slightly more conservative version bet of over 2.75 goals. Let's move on to discuss another game taking place this week. Borussia Dortmund lost 2-1 in the first leg against Manchester City in a game that was a bit closer than we thought it might be. You can get Dortmund at 5.1 to win this week. Manchester City at 1.68, and the draw, which would see City progress, at 4.25. On the handicaps, Borussia Dortmund with plus 3.25 goals start at 2.05. Manchester City at minus 3.25 goals at 1.86. The goal line is 3. Overs at 1.92, unders at 1.95. We were relatively confident Manchester City could give us a victory on the handicap. I think we were on them at minus 1.5 last week. Didn't quite pan out, and that first leg was a bit closer than we thought. Erling Haaland has continued his goal drought. I think it's 6 games without scoring now for club and country. Unbelievable. Brothers, we still like City in this one?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I think you look at the quality they have. I know they've lost at the weekend to Leeds 10-man leads. But there was a number of changes that Guardiola made in that game, resting key players and obviously with an eye on this fixture. So I wouldn't take that as any kind of form guide, especially with the cushion they have in the Premier League. I think he's pretty much decided that they've won that, and he can do what he likes in the Premier League now. I think looking at this match, it's interesting you say about Haaland's goal drought. You do wonder whether or not all the speculation that's going on about his future is affecting his mindset a little bit, because Ola is very publicly touting around all the top clubs in Europe and visiting people, and I mean it's not something.
He did get an assist in the first leg. He did get an assist.
He did. Oh no, and of course, I mean he's a sensational player. I mean you know, I feel that he's the best natural finisher that I've seen in terms of just pure finishing, and certainly a player of his age. I mean it's just extraordinary, and he's getting bigger and stronger by the day. There was that fantastic image of Foden talking to him at the end of the first leg, and Foden basically got up to his tummy button. And he just looks like an absolute beast. So, I bow to no man in my admiration of Haaland. I think he's going to be, the best striker in the world for a number of years to come. But, I mean, looking at this, you have to consider how the game's going to pan out. I mean, we know that Dortmund are probably going to try and keep things tight again, if they can. They've got the away goal, so they'll probably be thinking, if they can somehow keep Man City out and get nick a sort of 1-0, then they'll be through. But this Man City team, they're just so good. I mean, you look at the quality that De Bruyne can bring. I thought Gundogan was a little bit subdued by his high standards in the first leg, albeit he set up Foden for the winner. But I think this is a Man City team that will control possession. They will do what they did in the first leg, which is create opportunities. And I fully expect someone like Aguero or Jesus to start in this match, because I felt that they were lacking that sort of lethal finisher in the first game. And that Guardiola knows that he doesn't have to win this game. Man City can dominate possession. Sooner or later, Dortmund are going to have to come out and press them and try and push for a goal. And I just fully expect Man City to win it. I think they are the better team. We saw it the weekend again. Dortmund won, but they won 3-2 against Stuttgart and conceded another couple of sloppy-ish goals. And I just think that they're not a side that you can trust defensively. So, me, this is a very simple. I mean, we were very strong last week, Mark and myself, on Manchester City -1.5, and I think that was still the right play. I mean, albeit it lost, but it was still the right bet. And I think this game, Man City simply win, and I'd take the -0.75 on the handicaps, because I think they could win by 2 or 3.
It lost, but it was the right bet. That's what happened.
Well, it happens. I mean,
it does happen. It does.
The key to winning with any bet is to have bets at the right prices. Now, you're always going to have losing bets in that, but if you'll be a winner long term as long as you're having the right bet at the right price.
Absolutely. You're quite strong on this, as you were last week with that handicap bet. And Mark, it's generally a good sign when the two of you strongly agree on the same bet, which is what happened last week, although it didn't win. This week, I think you're in agreement as well.
Yeah, for sure. Talking about last week's bet, we beat the closing line quite convincingly towards the end as well, which is always a good barometer of how good your bet has been, or if you were on the right lines at least. And yeah, Dortmund surprised me. I thought they were excellent in the first leg, in fairness to them. We saw them produce something special in Seville, but I did fear the worst when they conceded that stupid goal really early on. Had a promising start and then conceded that sloppy goal, which it's just their season in a microcosm really. But normally they kind of flail and falter from thereafter, but I thought they recovered really well. You could see the frustration in all their players and management when they conceded that goal, game plan going out the window. But if that's a decision which Ederson got away with when Bellingham basically should have scored or at least got the penalty, who knows how the game would have panned out really. But the bigger picture is, from a Dortmund perspective, they got an away goal, they're still in this tie, they'll be encouraged that they kept City at arm's length. But from a City perspective, the room for improvement is vast, really. I think Foden and De Bruyne were the only players that have come out of it with any sort of credit, really. Defensively, I didn't think they coped massively well with Haaland, even if he didn't score. There was a moment where he just barged Ruben Dias out of the way, and it kind of unnerved the defence a little bit, which is a little bit of a concern. But I think, for me, coming back out of that game, seeing Guardiola, how frustrated he was with the performance. They only had 11 shots in the game, so he knows that they weren't anywhere near good enough. He talked about how they had to tweak their press coming into the second leg. So he's going to be looking for improvements. And I know people can look to this game and say, well, they've failed at this kind of stage in recent seasons against similar sort of teams, but this is the first time City have come into a quarter-final second leg in the lead, in the tie as well. So it's a different sort of pressure they're feeling, but I still think they're going to be too good for a Dortmund team, as Brod has said, who just cannot be trusted defensively. I watched the game again against Stuttgart at the weekend, and just so sloppy, so vulnerable, so fragile. And I think if City just turn up the notch a couple of dials, they'll be good enough to score a couple of goals here. And for that reason, it brings in the handicap play. But the beauty of the -3/4 handicap is we'll still make money if City win, regardless, whether it's by 1 goal, 2 goals, or 3 goals. We're still making money, which is what we're here for at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Two very convincing arguments about the same bet. City -3/4. That's our play for the game in Dortmund. Let's move on and talk about one of the big ties. The first leg of Bayern Munich Paris Saint-Germain was one of the best games I've ever seen, certainly in the last few years in the Champions League. PSG ended up winning somehow by 3 goals to 2. Bayern Munich had 31 shots. I think they had an XG nearly of 5, but they still managed to lose, primarily, I guess, because they didn't have Robert Lewandowski. They are trailing going into this second leg, but they are favourites to win in the French capital. You can get PSG at 3.14, Bayern at 2.19, the draw at 4.1. On the handicaps, you can get PSG with a quarter goal start at 1.97, Bayern minus a quarter goal at 1.92. The goal line is, as you'd expect, pretty high. Over 3.5 is at 2.02. Under 3.5 is at 1.87. Mark, we all quite like Bayern to win last week. They really should have. Somehow they didn't. Are they going to win? Are they going to win this week?
Yeah, I think they will, and I think they've got an outside chance of qualifying as well. Certainly wouldn't rule them out at all. Agree, absolutely fantastic, unorganised chaos that first leg. Just fantastic to watch. Loads of goals, cards, opportunities. Just brilliant football. Probably the Champions League final we hoped and expected last year, really. Just thrilling from the first whistle, even better with the snow as well. Just a great occasion, really. So, yeah, we liked Bayern last week, and the performance didn't necessarily surprise me. The result did. Those sort of defensive flaws, we've seen those vulnerabilities and those lapses in judgment over the past 12, 18 months now with Bayern. They've just got that superior firepower, which has been able to blast their way past most of the teams they've played during that spell. But yeah, as you say, without Lewandowski, and when you've got a team as dangerous really as PSG in the counter-attacking transitions, there is always going to be a concern. So yeah, I think that's probably why I still make City probably slight favourites to win the Champions League outright, really. They just have a little bit more control than Bayern at the minute. But, you know, credit to PSG, they took their opportunities, very, very clinical. We talked about the potential of Verratti being a huge absentee in that first leg. They didn't really need him in a way, because they just played basically long balls over the top, and you know, players like Neymar and Mbappe to take opportunities like that. But I think he will be missed in this match, and I think he will be missed as well with Marquinhos as well, who I think is absent as well. So basically their 2 on-field leaders won't be around. It was quite a simplistic game plan from PSG in the first place, but you know, they're going to be under pressure here. Bayern, you know, we've talked about PSG so many times on this podcast in the last couple of years about how they've not been able to handle the pressure when it's mattered, really. And okay, they got to the Champions League final last year, but this is
because
a different kind of pressure.
Europe's premier PSG backer on the podcast, Broadrick, every single year. PSG.
Well, I've got no hair left.
You're opposing PSG this week as well.
No, well, actually, just one point. Mark said that Verratti. I'm not sure he's aware, but Verratti has been.
I think he's been. Yeah,
and Florenzi. So him and Florenzi have both been COVID negative. So yeah, that's clearly going to be Frederick Yannick just mentioned that as well. Thank you, Frederick. So I think, yeah, I mean, Mark makes some good points. I think in terms of this game, it's going to be interesting because, I mean, we know that Bayern are going to create a ton of chances again, almost certainly, because of the way they play. And it's going to be simply a case of, do you trust their front line to convert those chances? Now, you know, Choupo-Moting scored a goal in the first leg, but they, you know, Bayern had a huge XG, as you mentioned, just under 5. And I just, from a sort of betting perspective, I find this game quite tricky because I think Verratti will improve PSG defensively considerably. I think Florenzi here nor there. I think he's better going forward potentially. But, in terms of their defensive shape, I think PSG will be stronger with Verratti in there. Do I trust Bayern to score 2, 3? Probably not. I mean, I think, PSG will do what they did in the first leg. They'll, tactically, again, I think it'll be interesting to see if Flick finally decides to abandon his high line, because he's been very, very consistent since being there. He's, basically ignored the opposition and has been happy to play this high defensive line. And it's been working superbly, for his whole time there. But in that first leg, as Mark said, PSG were able to undo them with some fairly straightforward long balls. And so, excuse me. I just think it's one of those games where we may see a bit of a tactical surprise. I think Flick may decide to sit a bit deeper and try and negate those long balls over the top, which, again, we're guessing. So, I mean, I just sort of trying to interpret what he could look at from his side. I like Bayern to win the game. I mean, for the reasons that Mark's touched on. I am a PSG, I wouldn't say fan necessarily, but I do support them.
Fanboy.
I back the Antipodes for this again, obviously, and Mark mentioned the final we hoped we had. I mean, my God, I really hope that was the final last year, because I'd have had a winner. But I think this is a game that could go. I mean, it's one of those ones which could go either way from a goals point of view, and it's a bit of a tricky one, because it does have the potential actually to play out a bit like the final. And sort of be surprisingly low scoring, even though it's a second leg and Bayern have got to push and so on, just purely because of the absence of Lewandowski and the fact that Bayern could sit a bit deeper to try and negate the pace of Mbappe and Neymar and so on. So, I think for me the bet is Bayern to win. It's not a game I'm going to go crazy on, and I think I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed that my Neymar top goal scorer and PSG anti-post slips stay alive.
Listen, if you just keep backing PSG every single year to win their Champions League,
if they're 11-1, I just have to wait 10 years and I break even.
There we go. That is not a good strategy to follow, guys, by the way.
It's exactly the strategy to follow. As long as the price is there, you're all right.
Okay. Final game for us to talk about before we go is Chelsea against Porto. This game being played, as the first leg was, in Seville at the Estadio Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan. Last week on their trip to Andalusia, Chelsea won 2-0 against Porto. Bit of a smash and grab job, but they got the job done with those 2 away goals. You can get them at 1.83 to win at home, quote unquote, because they are playing in Seville. Porto at 4.6 with the draw at 3.96. Chelsea with a minus 0.5 handicap at 1.83. Porto with a plus half a goal start at 2.08, and the goal line slightly higher than it was last week, 2.5. You can get overs at 2.02, unders at 1.89. Brothers, you are a Chelsea fan. We know that you don't often let your heart dominate your head though when it comes to Chelsea. What are we thinking for this game? Is it another difficult one to judge? Last week we quite liked the unders, and that proved a winner for us. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think it is a difficult one to judge. I think Porto played very well in that first leg. I think Chelsea were fortunate to win 2-0, certainly. And I think Porto missed Taremi and Oliveira, and obviously they're both back for this game. So I think it's going to be a very difficult match for Chelsea. I certainly wouldn't be looking to back Chelsea at those sorts of prices. And if anything, I think I'd probably look to lay Chelsea at that price, because Porto will know what they have to do in this game. They're going to press Chelsea. They're going to look to essentially play the same game they played last week, and get a better result, because the second goal was a defensive error that Chilwell took advantage of brilliantly. First one, Mason Mount, again, it was a well-taken goal, but it wasn't the greatest goal you'll ever see from a defensive standpoint. I mean, he was able to turn his man very easily, and then the goalkeeper probably could have done better with the shot. It wasn't the hardest shot you've ever seen in the corner. So I think as a Chelsea fan, clearly I'm praying that we get through. But I think looking at the match from purely from a sort of betting point of view, Chelsea are too short. And I think you look at the way that Porto performed, and I think Sergio Oliveira has been a tremendous player for them this year, and you can't underestimate his influence in the middle of the park. Taremi is a very good finisher. who was brought in to try and address their striking issues, and has started to really find his feet in the second half of the season. So, for me, it's not one again that I'd want to be strongly involved with. I mean, as a fan, but also just from a betting perspective. So, I think looking at it, I would probably have a small lay of Chelsea. They'd be happy with a draw, obviously, to proceed, and frankly, they'd be happy with a 1-goal loss. They just need to get through to the next round and play, one of Real Madrid and Liverpool.
Okay, there we go. I told you that he doesn't let his heart rule his head. Potentially lay Chelsea in this game. Mark, you were quite strong on the under 2.25 last week. That gave us a little win as well. Similar play this week, I guess.
Similar-ish. I do disagree with Broadrick in terms of the match prices itself. I'd much rather be with Chelsea than Porto. Absolutely called. He was spot on in how the first leg played out. Really, it was, I think Porto were pretty voracious in their approach and very, very decent, and the scoreline was very, very harsh on them too. You're going to get total buy-in from them again in terms of all the sort of unmeasurables of organisation and passion and application and hard work, etc. And clearly they're going to be a little bit stronger in terms of personnel too. However, this is just Chelsea and Tuchel all over, really. 2 goals up, able just to control the tie and see the game out, really. They were in a very similar position against Atletico Madrid, who I think we'd all agree are a couple of notches higher than Porto and the European football ladder. So I can see this game sort of playing out exactly the same way as the second leg did against Atleti too. Chelsea know how to defend with and without the ball. Under Tuchel, they've got an unreal squad, just ridiculous depth. It's hard not to see them scoring again, because at some point in time, Porto are going to have to attack and kind of chase the tie, chase the game as well. They scored first in both legs against Juventus, so they're not really have been in this position where they've had to chase ties. And as well, if you look, we talked about it last week, the goals that they did score against Juventus were defensive errors or from set pieces, really, penalties and free kicks. So they haven't created a huge amount from open play either. So Chelsea absolutely are suited to managing matches, absolutely suited to keeping the ball. The West Brom game was a complete anomaly, really, from what we've seen under Tuchel as well. So, yeah, I'm not expecting a goal-filled game, but I looked at the Chelsea price and I thought that's absolutely fair enough for a game at neutral venue. They basically hold all the aces here. It's up to Porto to come out and attack, and if they do, I think Chelsea have got the abilities really to hurt them too. So the prices aren't too dissimilar to what they were last midweek even. Yeah, sure, Chelsea were fortunate to win that game by a 2-goal margin, but it just comes down to ability, isn't it? And individually, they're a class apart, really. So, yeah, under 2.5 does probably appeal as well. However, second leg, anything can happen, really. So you don't really want to be backing the unders too heavily there. But if I was forced to, I'd probably look at something to do with Chelsea combined with under 3.5 goals, which will be available on the Matchbook site before the game as well. Be a bigger price if you put
not forcing you. Not forcing you, man. No, just go with your instinct. I'm not forcing you here. Chelsea's defensive record in Europe is ridiculous. 7 clean sheets in 9 games, which is unbelievably impressive. And Porto had 5 clean sheets in their last 8 games as well. So no one's asking me, but if you do, I'm going with unders. So there we go. Before I get the guys' best bets of the week, here is our bet recap so far. We like overs in Liverpool, Real Madrid over 2.75. We like Man City with minus 3/4 goal handicap. We like Bayern to win, and we quite like under 2.5 goals in Chelsea against Porto. Certainly I do anyway. And the guys potentially could be convinced as well. Before we go, best bets then of the week. I'll go with, who did I go with last week first? Do you remember? I don't. I'll go with Mark. There we go. Mark.
It was me last week, so it's Brothers' turn.
Brothers, it's your turn, Brothers, then to go first.
I'm going to try and guess what Mark was doing now. I would have. I mean, to me, it's a tricky week for me, and I think the one standout bet is goals in the Liverpool versus Real Madrid games. I think that would be the one I would have.
Okay, it's good when you both have the same best bet as well, because it means it's a really good bet. Mark is shaking his head. What's your second best bet of the week then, Mark? Assuming that goals in Liverpool, Real Madrid.
Yeah, goals at Liverpool. I'll take Man City with the handicap. As I said earlier, if you're getting paid out for Man City just winning the match, I think that's absolutely fine.
Okay, There we go. Those are our 4 matches in the Champions League this week predicted. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Hope you enjoy the games as well. We'll be back soon before the semi-finals to preview the first leg in those games. So make sure you join us then. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the Matchbook Champions League betting podcast on your preferred podcasting app. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.